Unless you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit, and now here's your host, Rich Barris.
There I am. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit, folks. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. We have polling to go over, primary and presidential. If we can get to the general election, we may have to save that for Friday because I really want to go over this in more detail. All right, there's top lines, and then there's things that are significant when you're looking in the poll, and that's what the whole entire point of this show is, right? Get beyond the top lines and inside, because there is a lot of significant movement, and I want to take the time that it deserves to go over it, because it is the silly season with silly, stupid things being said, silly, stupid claims being made, and that we have to address them. Also, the media is just, but conveniently, they have the Trump verdict yesterday, which, look, folks, it's a civil trial. It used to be years ago, back in the day, with something as scant as this, the judge would listen to the jury, who was also moved by it. It kind of reminded me a little bit of holding gun manufacturers, where judges would just listen to the jury, respect the jury's verdict, but at the end of the day, they can overturn it. They could say, look, you did not meet the bar here. But they have that to talk about. And they, of course, have, what's his name in New York to discuss, which we're going to talk about as well later. Both of them front and center on the front page of the AP. Not a word about the House Oversight Committee's report, very detailed report, including bank records, basically outlining what Nancy Mace, not exactly, folks, a right-wing bomb thrower, what Nancy Mace said was, and I quote, let me make sure I get the quote, the most corrupt scheme in American history. Again, Nancy Mace is very, very moderate. She had a Trump primary challenger, so you would expect her to be a little bit more measured. So for her to say something like this, it would normally, even 10 years ago, it would have warranted the media's full attention. But of course, they're more concerned with preserving, look, Joe Biden is running. Barring something happens, he is running. So they have to preserve Joe Biden, because I can tell you right now, and again, I want to talk about the differences in the modes here when we get into the poll, but I can tell you right now, this is not looking good for Joe Biden against Donald Trump. Trump had an early lead before COVID, and that was erased in 2020. Still, that lead was never built on the foundation, the same foundation that we're seeing now. There's some similarities to 2016, but it's worse for Joe Biden than it was for Hillary Clinton at this point. There's just, and then we had the tracking poll, daily tracking poll, the 4th of July, starting before the 4th of July, leading up until that election, and no time prior and no time during the daily tracker did we see some of the things that we're going to discuss with you today. We'll start with the registered voter, the likely voter. You'll get it, obviously, we're going to put it out, but you'll get a hint of what the likely voter model would mean to the overall results, because we have at least one part of the likely voting model in there, up there on the crosstabs right now for you to see, which is voting likelihood. Locals, you got to peek at the crosstabs yesterday, as you should, and you'll know where I'm coming from for that. So bear with me with some of the stuff that I'm going to be repeating, but I did, in case you haven't noticed, if you didn't review the crosstabs this morning and you only reviewed them yesterday when I put them up, then you're going to miss a couple of things. I added a few things to the crosstabs that'll be new. So at least that, keep it in mind. Plus, before yesterday was only a post. This time you get my very illuminating opinion that I know you care so much about. All right. And then, of course, the third thing is the state of the states. You might have noticed, if you're a local supporter, that this is a massive sample for a Republican primary electorate alone. The entire poll was over 3,000 registered voters. And before I bring this up, I'm going to harken back to this when we look at the crosstabs. I'm really starting to become part of the school of primary voters should be weighted separately. Looking back in 2022, and what do I mean by that? First of all, before I go drag you down in a deep dive and drown you all, most pollsters get the entire sample. They have their overall screens for general elections. They have their primary screens, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, the entire sample is weighted, and then the primary electorates are determined by the full weights, all right? And the rake weighting is what most people do, but I don't want to get crazy on this here. Just bear with me. I'm starting to fall into the modeling and propensity category with rakes, but especially when you have samples this big. We went back and did a couple of the polls from 2022, the primary polls that we did. Why did I get so damn close in Wyoming? Yet, we did good in the primaries, but we could have been closer in some of the states. Why did we do so damn good in Wyoming when nobody thought Liz Cheney was going to get crushed like Hageman like that? How did we know? And the truth is, it's because we weighted the Republican likely primary electorate separately. We modeled and weighted them separately. So when you're doing huge national polls, and by the way, when I went back and did a couple of I played around with a couple, Georgia's another one. If you took the Republican primary voter out of the entire sample, weighted it separately, you could see Kemp was doing better. Still not what Kemp got, but in our primary poll with Kemp, he needed every single undecided to get near the support of where he ultimately got. Unlike others, we did not have David Perdue in the 40s like some people are lying about. We had him in the 20s. That's what he got in the 20s, 23% or something like that. And I think he got 23 or 25%. So we nailed Perdue's share. But Kemp's undecideds, part of that was, that there were a lot of new voters there. They list incumbent on the ballot. So a lot of new low participation voters will look at it and say, I'll just vote for the incumbent. That's part of it. But we would have gotten closer to 60 if we would have removed the Republican sample altogether, weighted them separately. So what do I mean by that? Well, we're going to have three different separate weights: the likely Republican primary electorate, the likely Democratic primary electorate, and the likely general election electorate. Then it goes beyond that. We're going to start doing something different, and you won't see some of this until Friday. But in the general election, different electorates come out for different candidates. Mitt Romney is not going to have the same electorate that Trump had in 2016, obviously, right? Trump drove out millions and millions of new voters. Barack Obama in 2008. Well, for that matter, Hillary Clinton is not going to get the same electorate as Barack Obama, right? So for different candidates, different voters come out. And I really think there's a flaw in the polling industry when you're doing head-to-heads with different candidates. Trump v. Biden, Trump v. Newsom, Biden v. DeSantis, Biden v. Haley, right? We're all just using the same assumed electorate and applying it across the board. And that's not the real world. That's not how the real world works. That's not how elections work. There will be people who come out for Barack Obama in 2008, but will never come out for Hillary Clinton. There will be people who come out for Donald Trump, but will never come out for Mitt Romney. And that's the way we should reflect that as pollsters. Otherwise, we're misleading the hell out of people. There is, and you're going to look at it here in a second, there is a growing and massive share of the electorate that will not vote if one of two candidates on both sides of the aisle is not elected. If Robert Kennedy does not receive the nomination, then there will be a ton of eligible Democratic voters, which we're going to talk about the primary screen soon, that will not come out. And if they do, they may very well vote for Donald Trump. On the flip side of that, there are now, I don't want to give the number away because if you're not on locals, you haven't seen it yet, a growing number of that Trump or bust vote that we've been trying to measure has grown significantly this month. Remember, with a sample this size, you're only looking at an overall sampling error of a little over 2%. So if anything's online, panel, that's a confidence interval. It's different. But any of the interviews that were conducted by phone, you can give a traditional margin of error to. But together, we should collectively refer to this as a sampling error, not a margin of error. It is different, and I'm not going to get specifically into it right now. But with samples this large, the growth in the Trump or bust vote is way outside the sampling error. So we're not talking about a little bit of statistical noise here. This is, I think, my theory is listening to the interviews, reading transcripts from interviews. My theory is people are starting to see Trump supporters, those who have been with him forever and have never moved, and those new ones that he's gathered in the last month or so. These people are starting to see parallels to what happened to him in 2016. And they are at a point now where they won't vote. So you cannot possibly apply that electorate in a Biden versus DeSantis matchup and not take their word for it. Of course you have to. If we have to take the word, if it's fair to take the word of, on the flip side of this, DeSantis voters who tell us they'll vote, most of them will vote for Donald Trump if DeSantis isn't the nominee. He's by far their second choice. However, there is a chunk of DeSantis voters who will vote for Biden if he's not the nominee. So for, again, DeSantis' people who attack and say Trump's, voters are a bunch of cultists, better watch the attacks you hurl at people, because your voters are Biden voters. You have a ton of Mitt Romney pissed off once upon a time Republicans who are going to vote in the primary for someone other than Trump. And right now, DeSantis is the guy. If DeSantis falls in the mud next month, it'll be Glenn Youngkin. It'll be somebody. But your voters aren't the kind of vote that says, no, it's Ron or that's it. Your voters are the ones who say it's Ron or it's Biden. So, those who live in glass houses, watch the stones you throw. All right. So let's get into it. And look, before we get started, I don't want to waste a whole lot of time on this. I see your comments in there. Yes, Steve Cortez is the one I was telling you about. It is the gravitas endorsement that Charlie Gasparino was talking about. Steve is my personal friend, and I don't want to get into our conversations. That being said, we'll just have to see how this goes, because he did take a job with the smear pack. That is the smear pack. Despite, his personal reassurances, we'll just have to see, brother. We'll have to see. All right. So I don't like politics ruining friendships. If there's something at some point I feel like one of my personal friends is not being honest with me, then that's it. I will say this. I know the Trump voter probably better than anybody in this country, to include Donald Trump. He's run around and he's done rallies and he's shaking their hands. I have been studying these people since 2016, initially a skeptic who didn't believe initially the phenomena, and learned because I listened. And when these people don't forget. They're not going to forget. Win or lose, because the likelihood historically, just as a statistician, the likelihood of DeSantis being the nominee, and that was when we did these calculations, he was still a little over 21%. Remember in our last poll, would he come in at 21%? You're going to see where he is now. I told you he was going to fall below 20. I don't think I'm giving away a surprise here. So the likelihood of him becoming the nominee is even less than 20% now, without any mitigating circumstances. But there is a statistical number we can put on, a likelihood that we can put on but it won't matter because of the size of this Trump or bust vote. Any Republican needs these people to vote. If you haven't been paying attention in 2022, even 2020, the only reason why it was close was because of these kinds of people. A normal Republican would have got absolutely eviscerated. Instead, we're talking about unheard of turnout for a challenger against a president who gets the most votes ever in history and yet still loses. Come on, folks, pull your head out of your ass. Without those people coming out, we're not talking about a loss of like 50,000 votes between 3 states anymore. We're talking about an easy Joe Biden victory, a Barack Obama-sized victory. And in 18, Republicans in Minnesota alone, 300,000 Trump voters did not vote. Alone. One state. They don't come out. And it would have behooved the Republican Party to court these voters instead of constantly attack the figure that they obviously feel so loyal to. All right. Let's get into this here. I know some people are going to have a coronary. I really don't care. It is what it is. I forgot to add mode. Hold on. Well, you can look at it here, but I do want to add mode to the crosstabs because I did promise you this discussion on the difference in modes. All right. And what do I mean by that? Depending on how you spoke to somebody, how you interviewed someone, there is a difference in the responses. Now, Trump is leading in all of them, but it does change the margins. And I think that's very easy to explain if you don't think that they're just full of crap. It's very easy to explain, for instance, the difference in the Wall Street Journal poll and the Emerson poll, right? Or the Morning Consult poll. And I think you can actually clearly see that Spencer Kimball, is the director of polling at Emerson. I think you can clearly see what he's doing here. He's now gone back quite a bit to mixed mode, even for Republican primaries. Why? Because the fact is that, and actually, the last couple of days on the phone did not go well for Ron DeSantis. So it doesn't help all that much. But you'll still see the difference in the modes. If I parsed mode by age, you would see it even better. All right, so maybe we'll do that. Hang tight. But you're seeing Spencer adjust what he did because why? Take Arizona, for instance. He had Karen Taylor Robeson beating Kari Lake for the Republican nomination in Arizona. Why? All of his interviews were conducted by phone. He got people who were too old, too educated, and he overestimated or overrepresented the McCain wing of the party, the older wing of the party, and he underrepresented the younger, less white, more diverse MAGA primary vote. And that's what happened. So now you see him adjusting for that, especially when it's a presidential election, because now you're looking at voters who don't vote in midterms, tons of them, millions of them. Millions. And there's no way to reach these people in the traditional modes anymore. There's just not. Anyone who claims otherwise is wrong. That's why big media polling has been so bad at the presidential level for years now. Some of them have gotten better. Some of them have changed their methodology. But listen, if you don't change up your mode of collection and other things, but I mean, that's not a secret that I believe that. So I don't mind giving that away. It's not exactly proprietary. If you don't change your mode of collection, you're not going to reach these people. You may think that Josh Mandel is actually going to beat J.D. Vance for the Republican nomination in Ohio, or that it's close for that matter. It was not going to be close, as we told you. It was not. It was too late. Once JD got the MAGA stamp, those people were going to come out and vote for him. All right. So let's just a word on certainty to vote here. Even though men are about 7 percentage points more likely to be certain to vote than females, do not count out these females. They are going to vote. You'll actually notice that there's about that same difference in the likely to vote, meaning the odds are greater than 50-50. Count on the lion's share of those women to vote. Now, that being said, this is the results of the primary itself. This isn't applied. The likely voter screen, none of the modeling is applied. It will be, and we'll show you the difference. It helps DeSantis a little bit, but it also helps Donald Trump a little bit. So it doesn't really change much, but it does change the actual levels of support for each candidates. But right now, we're just showing you the registered voter. All right. 18 to 29. Oh, you can see it going up. It's more certain as you get older. That's always been the case. That's always been true, whether we're looking at age or age detail. Why do I do this, by the way? I try to give you guys demographic, which you always can select here in this column. All right. You can always choose different demographics based on this column. All right. And also if I cross, for instance, a question or something like that, like Republican candidate specific vote, the voting likelihood, that stuff also goes in the demographics column after the demographics. So I don't confuse you, but I'm doing these demographics the way traditional exit polls have been done through Edison and others for years, because it makes sense. I'm doing it as a matter of consistency. It's really that simple. So we not only give you age, but we give you age detail. Plus, let you in on a little secret. Some of that matters when it comes to your weights. How detailed, if you have a sample that's large enough, how detailed are your weights without destroying weighting efficiency? My weighting efficiency right now is 99.2%. That's the percent of my weighting efficiency. Why? Because you oversample to make sure you reach representation, and then you weight down. If you weight up because you did not speak to enough people, your weighting efficiency will decline, and the significant the likelihood that you're going to increase your error margin, your sampling error, or your oh my god, I'm sorry, I'm getting tongue tied here. Yeah, the likelihood you're going to increase your sampling error significantly is just going to happen. It's not even a likely, it will happen. So you have to talk to more people. You cannot wait to compensate for not having adequate size. Got it? All right. Whites are always more significant or always more likely to vote than minorities. However, this is pretty interesting here. African Americans in our polling, I went back 2 years and couldn't find a single national poll where African Americans were less certain to vote than Hispanics. Now, it's not much. And again, you can see it's like 1 point higher with the greater than 50-50 likelihood. But when it comes to all but certain, 95 plus, Hispanics are 73%, African Americans are 71%. And it's not that big of a difference, but it is a significant difference from other numbers. What do I mean by that? Hispanics are usually the lowest, even lower than Asians. Asians vote at high rates. Hispanics are the least likely to vote. So will Hispanics flex their political muscle this time? Muscle that they have not really flexed to their full potential. They have not. I wonder. I want to know whether or not in a month or now we go back and take another national poll if this is the case. Very, very interesting. All right, by race detail, and you can see here that actually, in fact, Asians are more likely. When you separate, this is Asian other. When you separate Asians from the rest of other, Asians are significantly more likely to vote than the rest of the Asian other category. And then again, even more likely than Hispanics and African Americans. Not quite as much as whites, but it has happened in the past where African Americans voted higher rates than whites. They definitely are. This is why the voter suppression line is such a load of crap. African Americans are the one and only category has consistently increased their turnout rates. Everyone else has fluctuated greatly. Some even decline. Not African Americans. They continue to rise. All right, by party, you can see Republicans, which this overall registered voter sample is just under R+1. And I think we were more than favorable to Democrats when it comes to this, because there's a lot of them calling themselves independents right now. That's really, I mean, and more people calling themselves Republicans, even though we know that the actual voter file that we pulled from was D+4. And when we look at the responses, it was about D+4, but self-identification was just under R+1. All right, Democrats, 84% certain, Republicans, 88% certain, independents and others, 74% certain. Where is my detail? I don't have a detail here. I need to put that up, where we break up independents from third-party voters. I don't know why that's not up there. Maybe because third-party voters were a little bit less this time, only about 2, I think it was 2.8, something like that. But still should be up there. Liberals are less likely, but more likely than moderates. Laura looks beautiful. More likely than moderates. I'm sorry, you do. Jeez Louise. I totally distracted me, Laura. What kind of producer does that to the host? Anyway, no, good for you, girl. Good for you. Conservatives, 86%, liberals, 82.7%, moderates, 80%, moving over. This is one thing that should concern everyone, but it's minorities with high school or less that are really doing it. Whites are not that bad. They're almost 80%, and that's high for, listen, let me just say, what do these numbers even mean? It means it's going to be an absolutely monumental turnout. This turnout, this kind of certainty this early, we've never seen. 60s? Yes. As far as like certain to vote, I mean, overall, these groups, this top line right here should be in the 60s right now. We're already looking in the 80s. And when you get to older people, educated people in the 90s, this is unheard of. This is going to be a very, very big turnout in 2024. If this keeps up, can it change? Can people all of a sudden get depressed and not vote? I guess. But you better get ready for a monstrous 85, 90 million per candidate. This is going to be enormous because the voter rolls are growing. And this is why that result among Hispanic voters is so significant, because all the growth is working class Hispanics. The white educated voter isn't, more whites got college degrees, but the white educated voter isn't growing. Whites aren't growing. They're falling. They're shrinking. All right. Asians and Hispanics are growing. And African Americans, by the way, are not growing. I wonder with Roe v. Wade being overturned, if that will change at some point. Not in the short term even, but in the mid to long term, considering that African Americans are by far the biggest victims of abortion policy. Race and education, some college associate, 4-year, look at it. I mean, you guys can see it here. We can keep going. Income brackets. This is good for Ron DeSantis and Joe Biden. I mean, they need a disproportionate turnout advantage to significantly change the results. Joe Biden is getting crushed right now by listen, before Friday, I'm just going to tell you, Joe Biden is getting absolutely destroyed right now by Donald Trump. So they would need these groups to vote disproportionately. Marital status, married voters typically always more likely to vote, but you can see it here. Everyone is pretty much, except for separated, everyone is pretty much at significant levels of certainty right now. Parents, they're going to vote in droves, especially parents who are more conservative and their kids are over 18. Military and veterans, the military is the least certain to vote, but I bet you there still will be a decent turnout because there's still a lot in the 50% or more category. Veterans vote. They vote. They always vote. But the non-veteran vote is even slightly higher, or non-military veteran. Protestants, they're going to vote in droves. Catholics, they're going to vote. Jewish voters always vote as well, and they tend to be more secular. Muslim voters, which are obviously very small, still, it's significant that they're there. Another religion, high. No religion, very high. And that's another big deal, by the way, because Republicans suffer among the no religion category. Not Donald Trump. And you're going to see. So he did in 2016 and in 2020. He is not now. That's one of the major, I got to stop and point that out. That is one of the major changes. Underclass. Even some more educated voters. Certainly non-whites. Urban voters. And those who, my pastor calls the rise of the nuns. The nuns. Evangelicals going to vote at very high rates. Very high rates. Urban America is actually less likely to vote than either suburban or rural America. Very, very interesting. By region, the Northeast always votes at high rates, but look at the Midwest. And look at the West, by the way. But look at the Midwest. For those who don't know, Minnesota, very high participation state, historically. New Hampshire, very high participation state, historically. One from each group there, And by the way, a lot of people were a little bit shocked to know or to learn what states make up what regional definitions. So I'm just going to tell you real quick right now before we get into this, and then you'll know why we have the South a little bit higher than some other polls, because we don't parse out the Mid-Atlantic. All right, we do, but we don't for showing you. Why? For the sake of exit polls. Again, this is not how exit polls do it, and I'm going to show you. So if we look at the regional definitions, the Northeast is Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, which some's Mid-Atlantic. We have it. And for us, Pennsylvania is in the Northeast. Rhode Island, Vermont, and Connecticut. The Midwest, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, Ohio, South Dakota, Wisconsin. The South, which I got a lot of comments over this. Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Arkansas, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, Washington, D.C., West Virginia, Delaware, and Florida. The South does include Maryland and Delaware if you're using the 4 census tracts. The West is, obviously, Hawaii, Idaho, Alaska, Montana, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Oregon, Utah, Washington State, California, Wyoming, and Colorado. All right, so I just wanted to clear the air there, and maybe that helps explain it. In the future, we got a request that in the future, can we please, do the at least 5 census regions, maybe more? Sure, absolutely. And maybe we'll start to do that. We'll show you the 4 regions from traditional exit polling so it doesn't confuse you. And then we'll do things like the Southwest, right? The North, Pacific Northwest, the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic. We can do that. All right. Well, let me take a real quick sip of water. And instead of scrolling down, we're just going to isolate this. All right. You guys can see this okay? All right. So, a little change, not much. I guess, honestly, for those who were watching, we actually Trump 1 point higher earlier in the week. Being as favorable as possible to everybody here, or as being fair as possible to everybody here. Again, I should probably, and maybe we'll go over this on Friday. If you do what I was talking about in the beginning of the segment, where we specifically remove the Republican sample, then the Republican, when we do that, and we look at the voter file, where Republicans are, their certainty to vote, vote history, it certainly changes area, region quite a bit. age quite a bit. So it would be more conservative traditionally. And that would push Trump even higher. And you're going to see why in a second. It also pushes DeSantis slightly higher. It pushes him to about 18 point something. It's not that big of a deal, but Trump goes to 61. All right. So we use the more moderate weight here. We did. And I just want to be open and transparent about that. It is possible that that is not at all what happens. All right. But as of right now, this is more than fair. And, it's justifiable. It's defendable. It is. But it is the more moderate weight. So, for instance, the Quinnipiac poll, they projected with the Republican likely primary vote, they projected conservative vote to be about 70%. We have it less than that here. We have it at about 65%, I believe. I'd have to go and check, of the primary vote. If we had it at 70, then that's what would put Trump at about 62, actually. But it's not. So that's why there's a little bit of a difference. And I wanted to show you that. For all this talk about women, Trump's strength comes from women. But this month, he improved almost 10 points among men. He obviously improved among women too, but women were always in the mid-50s in recent, not always, in our recent polling where we really first drew a line in the sand, and I posted out that thing that drew everyone's fire who supports DeSantis. Obviously, I was way ahead of the trend and way ahead of the curve. Very clearly, if you look at the consensus of polling right now, including the Morning Consult poll that just came out this morning and almost mirrors us completely, you can see that Trump is obviously, his strength is coming from women. Republican women, for all this talk, have pushed Trump above 60, at 60 or above, depending on the weights. Men now are just under 57%, 56.9%. That's up considerably from our last poll, which was 48%. So he rose about 10 points. It was like 47.9 or something like that. He rose about 9 points, okay? To be specific. With women, he rose about 8 points, and here we are. So he is gaining with everyone, but it is still the case that women support Trump more than men right now. And on Friday, when we look at what's going on in the general election, it is women. Women. Yeah, that's right. I'm breaking your brain by going against conventional wisdom here. It's women. Okay? They are doing this. That is contrary to everything you're hearing from influencers right now. But it is the God's honest truth. And by the way, we're not the only ones to show it. The consensus from us, Emerson, Rasmussen, just talking to Mark about this the other day, having private conversation, like, listen, it's women with you? It's women? Yup. Republican women are fueling Trump's surge. Despite verdicts that he's a rapist. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh at something like that, but when a guy goes on the stand and tells the lawyer, yeah, I mean, listen, she's not my type. She doesn't meet my standard. And no offense, neither do you. That's brazen. Only innocent men talk like that, ladies. And you obviously know that. You don't buy it. You don't buy it at all. So you're supporting Trump more than men are. Men are supporting DeSantis more than women are. All right. The 18 to 29 is a little bit misleading. Let's scoot forward here and let's go one by one. Okay. Age detail. You can see that MAGA is younger. Yes, Trump is, and this is another major development. Trump is doing better again. And from our last poll, it was certainly an improvement with people 65 and above. But this poll is another bigger improvement. Why? Look at the 65 to 74. He's now even above 60 with 65 to 74. And again, this is why you see what I'm talking about. It's not that younger voters support DeSantis more. So if the weights were different, would help DeSantis. That's not it. Younger voters are supporting Trump more than they're 4-1, 5-1 over DeSantis. It's just that they are at a lower share of the vote right now. Why? Because of some throwaway crazy votes, but they're also, 18 to 24 is fairly undecided still. All right. Or at least compared to others. I'm actually shocked. This is something we have to talk about too. How few people are undecided. This is the problem non-Trump Republicans are starting to run into. Nikki Haley collapsed. Tim Scott collapsed. Asa Hutchinson has nothing. 1,400 interviews, plus, and he got 5 people to say they would vote for him. 5. And look, they're younger votes. These are throwaways. These are younger people who didn't know what to pick. Can we be real? Can we have some real talk here? These are younger people who had no idea who to pick. They were just like, whatever. Same thing it looks like with Larry Elder. Maybe he has some legitimate younger support. Larry Elder, I'll give that to. But 1,400 interviews, 10 people chose Larry Elder. Tim Scott plunged. He was once in the mid, approaching high single digits. He's at 1.2 now. Cratered. Nikki Haley cratered to 3.7. Vivek rose to 4th place. Vivek is slowly but surely, Vivek is rising little by little by little. That is small, and it's hard with statistical certainty to say how much, but if you guys, I know you've been following our polling, little by little, Vivek has inched up, right? He went from what? In our first poll, he was at like nothing, like 0 point something. And little by little, he hit 2.5. Then he hit 3. A little over 3. Now he's at 5%. Slowly but surely, Vivek ticks higher. Mike Pence fell. He's still in 3rd place, but he fell to 5.3. Ron DeSantis fell from 21, again now, to 16.6, 17. Will be nice. We'll say 17. And Trump rose. So as people are leaving some of these other voters, some of these other candidates, it is not true that all of them, their second choice is someone other than Donald Trump. I tried to warn you guys about this. Even Mike Pence's voters, the lion's share of them went to Donald Trump this month. We will talk a little bit about nesting. I'm trying to get to as much as I can. That's a good... we will take nesting requests and questions. Yeah, Laura. I mean, if people want us to nest something and put it in there, even if I can't do it during the show, I'll do it, and I'll do it after, and you guys can look at the crosstabs, because there is one nesting variable I've got to get through, and then there's one more that I want to get through. Whether I can or not, I don't know. Yeah, we'll do this on Friday too, because once it's done, and let me turn that off, so when she texts me instead of private chats me, it doesn't ring. But yeah, there's a lot on Friday we're going to do, because we'll mix it in with questions, but also we'll have the presidential numbers up there, and we'll be able to just show everything all at once. Like, okay, so if we nested this, how does this impact primary votes? But also how are these different nested demographic groups voting when it comes to both the general and the primary? So yeah, we will definitely do that more. Vivek's support is largely young, but why did he rise? He started to get a little bit more in the I don't want to, 40 and above. That's me, for crying out loud. Not young, middle age to older voters. Vivek is starting to get a little bit of a foothold in. Interesting, right? Interesting. DeSantis always had older voters supporting him, not younger voters. However, it's not so much that DeSantis started to do better among the 30 to 39 from last month. He didn't. That's actually a slight decline. Still holding at 20. He did worse among older voters. These older voters, this is a big deal. Trump was always killing it in the 40 to 49, and he went from 60 to 66.2. 30 to 39, he went from 56, I think, or 55. I'd have to go back and look, to 62. So these are improvements. But the real shocker is here, especially here. The fact that he is now at 60.9 with 65 to 74. That was DeSantis's best group. While the super seniors, DeSantis certainly was drawing support from them, but that's the group that was like disillusioned with Trump after the midterms. These two groups specifically, but these are the groups that pushed Trump into the 40s. This group has always been Trump, or 49 and below, 50 below 50, and certainly 45 and below. That's always been Trump's strong age group. So his strongest age groups. MAGA is younger, like I told Glenn Greenwald on Twitter. And he tweeted, he tweeted a poll that showed that younger voters are not for intervention. And then he said, no wonder why they're so terrified of DeSantis. What the hell are you talking about? DeSantis doesn't have any young voter support. Not really. Not compared to, let's get real. He's getting clobbered. The closest one is 30-39, and it's 3-1. So what are you talking about? But anyway, his vote always came from older traditionalists, and he lost a lot of them this month. And that's why that is the main reason for his sharp decline. All right, by race, Trump is now winning 61% of the white vote. He's still in the 40s among blacks, but more than 4-1 margin over anybody else. Ron DeSantis did pick up some black support by like 2 points or something like that. 3 points maybe. I have to go back and look for sure, but that's about it. He still is not performing with Hispanics. 56, Trump is now well into a majority of Hispanic voters, and Trump continues to lead even among Asian voters. Asians were almost 6 and 10 last month for Trump. Now they are at 68-14. These are just, folks, this is bad news for anyone not named Trump. I understand the concept that it's early, and that is true of certain cycles. It is not always true that the early primary leader doesn't end up being the nominee. That's not always true. And this is a very unique case where we have a former president who the party still loves. Somewhat favorable is very small, only like 10%. The rest of it is very favorable. Look at the Morning Consult poll. It just hit a post-presidency record. It's, hard truth here. Hard truth. It's going to be hard to beat a popular former president, especially with numbers like this. And the undecideds is just falling so much. African Americans are only going to make up, 4 or 5% of the primary electorate. I can actually go and look. And actually, you know what? Let's see. Let me add it. Rose. Let me go to Rose. Which primary you're going to vote in? And I know that I'll leave the whole question there for now, and then we'll update it. Actually, I would like to do that. Hold on. And now let me refresh this. Oh yeah, Laura, I will. She's flagging me. It's time for a commercial break. Give me 1 second though. Let's look by race in the Republican primary electorate. This is not quite how it goes, but because this is they're in the column category. This is the table. So of the Republicans, the 54% who said that, or the 48% who said that, 54% were. So it's not quite all this way, because look at Native Hawaiian. This is by column, so it would actually have to be in this column, which I will move it to. Let me put that in this column, and let me drag this over here. It didn't nest, right? Nope, it did not nest. So if you look by, we'd have to have race in the other one, but let me look on my end so I don't have to deal with this and Laura doesn't yell at me too much. African Americans are going to be about 5%, 6%, it looks like. Hispanics could be as much as 16%. So you could be looking at a 22% non-white Republican primary electorate, and this is absolutely possible, which would be more than double what it's been in the past. But even if it's not, you can see, obviously, white voters are going where they're going. But in any event, move this back, and we'll take a break. I know, Laura. I see you. So basically, Hispanics, though, are now firmly in Trump's category. That's a big major blow to the What, Laura? The argument that, because DeSantis won Florida, he's going to win Hispanics nationally as well. That there is, of course, nothing in the historical record or in the history of psephology to support that. Gubernatorial elections have no predictive value with presidencies. Sorry. That's just true. I can't believe I got to say this over and over again, including to my good friend Steve Cortez, who we talked about this 3 weeks ago, and then yet he still put it in the Liberal Newsweek, and that he knows that's not true. I love you, Steve. Why'd you do that? You know it's not true to cheerlead. Presidential election, right? Laura said they forgot that Trump even won Florida for DeSantis, right? But he wouldn't be. That's true. Fair. It's true. Putnam would have been the nominee. That is absolutely 100% the truth. But getting it, down to the brass tacks of using that as an argument, then why didn't Mitt Romney carry Massachusetts? Why weren't Republicans competitive in New Jersey? You think if Chris Christie was the nominee, they would have been? Are you just blowing smoke up your own, you know what? Or do you think that Tennessee would be competitive for Democrats, that they could pick it up if Bradenson was the presidential nominee? You out of your mind? Terry Branstad was the longest serving Republican governor in Iowa. Longest serving governor in Iowa, period, I believe. And yet when he was governor, Republicans repeatedly lost the state. If Terry Branstad was the nominee, you think he'd win Iowa? No, he wouldn't have. Presidential politics are totally different. The PVI, the strictness of the PVI is totally different. And everyone knows that in my business. So I don't know why they keep allowing people to make this argument without significant pushback. Bob McDonnell won Virginia by the same margin Ron DeSantis won it, Florida in 2022. If Bob McDonnell was the nominee in 2012, Barack Obama still would have beat him in the state of Virginia. Sorry. All right. And by the way, remember that when you hear what you hear about Youngkin. Youngkin barely won. He won. He did a great job. Don't get me wrong. He did a great job and he won, but he barely won. You think if he was the nominee, he's going to carry Virginia? Well, I mean, Laura's just laughing in the other room because, of course, she's been watching me do this for years. Gubernatorial elections don't have any predictive value. They are more localized than any other election statewide in the country. National security experts are warning that our aging power grid is more vulnerable than ever. January marked the third time a power station in North Carolina was damaged by gunfire recently, and authorities say that this raises a new level of threat. They've identified key substations, and if they are attacked, power would be knocked out from coast to coast for up to 18 months. Imagine it, a blackout that lasts not days, but weeks or months. Could you imagine how people would act if a blackout lasted weeks or months? Could you imagine? Look at how they reacted with COVID, for crying out loud. But anyway, our lives would be frozen in time the moment the power went out. That's why you need a solar generator. The new Patriot Power Generator 2000X is portable, but it's powerful enough for your phones, medical devices, even your refrigerator. Right now, you can go to 4patriots.com and you can get 10% off if you use the code TPP10 at checkout. Of course, this code is for your first purchase only, but that's 4patriots.com. Use the promo code TPP10 to get your Patriot Power Generator today. I know Laura and I absolutely love 4Patriots, and even with a natural gas generator, still found it appropriate to get a solar generator. All right. Why not cover all your bases? Again, last time, 4patriots.com, promo code TPP10. And before we go, I'm going to tell you real quick about an offer from our friends at Jam and Bean. Patriot owned, Midwest, salt of the earth. Also happen to be the bomb at Roast and Coffee, making maple syrup, gourmet, natural popcorn that's affordable. Whether you're like me or you're roast only, I'm a bit of both. If I'm in a rush, I want a K-cup because I don't really have the time. Speaking of which, Laura, that would be great. Also, when I'm home and it's just me and Laura, I love when Laura does the tea. I'm not the tea guy. I'll tell you that. but I love steeping my own tea. I love grinding fresh beans, roasting my own coffee, no matter what your preference is. You sign up for a new subscription today at Jam and Bean, and they will give you, if you use the promo code TPP40, they will give you 40% off your new subscription, and yet still you will get the 10% People's Pundit discount on every renewal each month. Again, I got to say that again because I know it's a fantastic deal, and I don't know how long they're going to keep it going for. TPP40 at checkout on a new subscription will knock 40% off the new subscription that you get, plus you will still get the 10% off renewal on each subsequent renewal each month. Go to jamandbean.com. It's right up there on the screen, JAMN bean.com, jam, and as in Nancy, bean.com. Use the promo code TPP40 at checkout. Take advantage of that deal before it is a goner. All right. I think Laura's over there doing that because the banner. Can I get a jam and bean, Laura? Can I get a jam?
No, sir, not at the moment. I am
Even if you put it in a funny cup. Don't put it in that cup if I'm going to drink it on screen. I'm like, I can't drink that screen. I can't drink that coffee cup on screen. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
I'm just upstairs with the little one.
Does the lip work? Does the lip work? I'll get it on a break. Don't worry.
Yes, you will.
All right. Nothing but love for you. Sup, Roro? All right.
Daddy.
Did he say daddy? Did I hear him say that?
He did say daddy.
All right, let's go back to the crosstabs. Love you, miss you too, Roro. Love you always, miss you too. Oh, that's still jamming. All right, let's go back to the crosstabs. Do you guys have the crosstab link? Not everybody? Okay. Locals, putting it in the chat in case you don't have it, which I know you all should have. Getter. Bum. What's going on, Getter? Come on. There's got to be a way for us to schedule Getter. I know I'm just not figuring it out correctly, I guess. But as soon as the live chat loads up, I'll get it to you too, Getter. Rumble, here it comes.
Not only that, but I'd like to be able to put links in Getter for them.
Can't you though? That's the thing. Like, it's not loading up. Here's the crosstabs. Yeah, there we go. If I send something, it'll show it. But there's the it cuts it in half. Man, really? What if I get rid of the word poll? Sorry about that, Getter. Really? It looks like that one might have. Nope, it cut it. All right, Getter, I will post it. All right, that's the only way. That's the only thing I can do for you. Rumble, you got it. YouTube, you don't have it, right? I mean, most of you probably already do, but there we go. And this crosstab will get bigger and bigger as I add more stuff to it. We haven't added the Democratic nomination. All right, not yet, but we will. So, are you serious, Rich? Don Lemon's on Grindr? No. That's hilarious. And right, people, I'm not going to get into it. Let Barnes take those cracks. All right, I'm just going to leave it alone. All right, I'm going to stick to my poll. There's no way around it. Once somebody makes a joke like that, no matter what you say, somebody can misconstrue it. All right, where were we? Race detail, we got that. Of course, other race and ethnicity is significantly, such a small sample. But with Asians, when you put them together, so if we did just a combined of Asians and other, you can see that's a 68. All right, so that was the race detail. Let's look like by party. Trump is taking 58% of the independents to 13% to DeSantis. He's taking 62% of Republicans to 18% for DeSantis. There are Democrats who are eligible to vote in the Republican presidential nomination in certain states. This is something I want to address. We have a different primary screen than most other pollsters. In some states, there are closed primaries. In some states, there are semi-closed primaries. Florida being a closed one, North Carolina being a semi-closed one. And then you have open primaries like Texas. So your screen has got to reflect the reality of the world. If you are eligible to vote in any of these primaries, which one is it? If you are not, you are ineligible. I'm just looking at C509. Rich, which VP hypothetically helps Trump the most? As far as any Republican, it still is DeSantis, and stick with me and I'll explain to you why. Well, actually, I started to in the beginning of the first segment, which is that DeSantis has this, Trump's got a Trump or bust vote, and he's also got a vote who would consider voting for a third party. But DeSantis has a DeSantis or Biden vote. All right, so that's why. Among ideology, you can see here Trump is over 2/3 with conservatives. That makes you essentially unbeatable in a Republican primary. I'm sorry, but it's true. That's just the reality. And Jonathan Barnes has been over this. I think if you're talking about the states, both being from the same states, there is a way out of that. Unless you're talking about something totally different. I misinterpret you. And yeah, I think you meant Tinder, Jonathan. I think you meant Tinder. I said Grindr. I said what he wrote, but I thought he meant Tinder too. I've never heard of Grindr, but I thought he was just being a wise guy because it's Don Lemon, you know? So Tinder is Grindr anyway. I mean, let's be serious. Tinder's for couples who want to cheat on their Tinder is for cheaters, yo. Sorry, but it's true. I mean, I'm sure there's some other way. Tinder's for cheating and and for single booty calls. All right. If there is a Grindr, then I'll have to check it out because if he's serious, that's just even worse. And Ellen says, no, he meant Grindr. Laura's like, shh. Well, Laura, I'm not a Tinder fan. I don't like Tinder. I think it's not good for the culture. But you know what? At the end of the day, we're a free
I hope you
society.
don't. I mean, I think you're good.
I know yeah. And like I look at Base Player 2011. I mean, that's also it helps with that as well. It pushes that as well. And ultimately, we're a free society. So, I'm not for like banning it or anything, but I don't think it's good for society to have these apps that really like helps cheaters. It's the devil on your shoulder. It's a family destroyer. It's stupid. Anyway, something Harry Enton was talking about, we need to discuss. Nikki Haley is doing better than any other non-Trump candidate with the liberal Republican vote. So for the DeSantis camp, that's what they've been saying. Well, you got to get out. Nikki Haley's been telling donors, look at him. He's a bobblehead. He's not up for this. I'm at least polished. I was an ambassador to the UN and a governor. I'm up for it. He needs to get out. So they're going to be doing this back and forth because they're going to try to consolidate these two lanes. But the truth is, Trump is so dominant with conservatives, and he's holding his own with moderates. He's not above 50 with moderates, but he sure is close. And moderates are still 8% undecided. They're the most undecided group. This is a problem for non-Trump voters. 2/3 plus are going for Trump, and only 4% are undecided. And 1% say someone else. This is a major problem for anyone who wants to defeat the former president. If you found something different, it's because you're in a live caller trap. You're a dinosaur. Your polling methodology made you think Alan Fung was going to win Rhode Island too. I don't know what to tell you. You're a dinosaur. These people are the hard ones to find sufficiently so that you really are truly representing them. And right now, that's an unbeatable number. You cannot beat Donald Trump with that number. Maybe if he was getting annihilated 90-10 among liberals and moderates, and they softened his support a little bit with conservatives. That's not happening. This is what Harry Enton wrote about in CNN, what he's trying to explain to people. Typically, if you're being favorable to DeSantis, and let's say he's at 20%, his odds already of winning at someone who's at 20% at this time are already pretty low. Forget about that he's running against a former president who's still popular with the party. It's the lanes that matter. He's trying to out-Trump Trump in the Trump lane. You need to try to do like what Mitt Romney did to Rick Santorum and Newt Gingrich. And the problem for them is that's not happening. Moderates are voting for Trump. That's why Trump is so strong in urban and suburban areas. So much for the suburb idea. Not like this, you ain't going to win the suburbs. Not only are you not going to win the suburbs, you're not going to win anything. With numbers like this, you lose everywhere. You pluck a county off here and there that's unique, but you lose everything. You thought South Carolina was embarrassing before? If he's taking 46% of moderates and more than 2/3 of conservatives, he's taking every single county in the state of South Carolina. Again, only last time he did it because it was a bigger crowded field. He doesn't even need it to be a crowded field now. He's just going to do it. The head-to-head is now like 66-33. Not even, actually. It was 66-25 with the rest being undecided. It shows that DeSantis has a ceiling, at least as of right now, a very clear ceiling. Let's look at education. And this is one of the nests I want to go over. So the working class, overall, all races, Trump has a 54-point lead among working class Republican primary voters. He's got a 51-point lead with those who have some college or an associate degree, which is becoming a massive group in Republican primary elections. Some college associate, meaning they got a 2-year degree or they have some college, not 2-year yet. 4-year undergrads is the devastating result for Ron DeSantis here. This was his best group, even sometimes even more so than postgrads. And as you can see, even though these were close in our polling, this is the first time it's not close. Trump was doing, in the last poll we did, Trump rebounded a little bit with advanced and postgrads, but he was still below 40, and DeSantis was at like 25 or something. I'd have to go back and look, or 20, let's say 20 something, like right around where he is now. It was the 4-year and undergrad where DeSantis was doing really well, and it was really close. You guys remember? But it's not now. Trump is even above 50 with college-educated voters of all races. What about if we look at just whites? You can see that non-white, advanced post-grad Republican voters support Trump at a higher rate than whites do. If you're white and you have an advanced degree, more than 4 years of college, you support Trump 51-24 for DeSantis, but non-white, Hispanic, Black, Asians who have an advanced degree, more than 4 years, post-grad, right? They support Trump at an even higher rate, 58%. I'm just going to tell you. 4-year whites, 52 for Trump now to 22 for DeSantis. This massive group of some college and associate degrees, the non-whites support Trump at a higher rate than they do whites, but it's still overwhelming, 66-16. In high school or less, white working class is a margin I didn't think we would hit this year. It's massive. Massive. It's a 48-point lead. Nearly 50 points. 35 was damning in a Republican primary. 35 was a hard hurdle, but you could do it if you really consolidated everyone else here. Everyone else from here over. And that was a tough lift because you weren't getting these people. That wasn't going to happen. But you could get these people. You could get them under the right circumstances. And they didn't. They did for a bit. They lost them. And now they're majority or just bare majority supporting Trump. This group is a firewall for Trump. This is not the first time that we have seen some college and associates right around where non-college at all. You cannot win a Republican primary trailing with the white working class by 48 points. You can't do it. You will not be the nominee. You'd have to thrash them among college educated because they're going to vote. They're going to vote at very high rates. You can count on them more. But do you really think that they're not going to come out and vote for Donald Trump, these two groups? Do you really think that's going to happen? When they did for J.D. Vance at sufficient rates? When they did for Kerry Lake at sufficient rates? You think they're not going to do it for the man himself? Good luck. And let me ask you, maybe the indictment stuff chisels away at this. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. But maybe it does. Do you think it's going to do something with this? Or is it the potential it could backfire and we can have a Lula-like situation? It's plausible. I don't know yet. We'll have to wait and see. I'm not claiming. I have my suspicions. But I don't know. Look at income. Holy crap. Under 30,000, 71-6. 30 to 50. One of the hearts of the Republican base. 61-16. 50 to 100. The second part of the heart of the Republican base, frankly. 58 to 19. 100 to 200,000. 59 to 18. 200,000 or more. 52 to 25. Still 2-1, but there obviously is potential there for DeSantis. Let's go down, though, actually, real quick and look at the undecided shares there. The wealthier end of the spectrum still has 8% undecided. The problem with that is there's still 6% undecided with under 30, 30 to 50, and 50 to 100. Look at the difference in the share of the electorate versus these three groups. 50 to 100,000 is the core. The core. I mean, I don't know how much more plainly I can make this for you guys. And by the way, Vivek's rise, a lot of that came from the core. Vivek was doing well with some more, wealthier people, younger, wealthier people, which was weird. But that's what it was. I went back and looked at it. Now he's doing well with some of the core of the Republican Party. And actually, if you look at, let me just go back to education real quick. If you look at Vivek with education, it's very, very broadly across the spectrum. All right. So that means it's real. When it's like he's at 5, but it's 5% across all education groups, it's real. And when you look, by the way, by education, undecided, postgrads, the 4 years, they're not statistically any more likely to be undecided than the working class is. This undecided falling to 5%. That's cut in half from our last poll, folks. That cut in half. And only 3% someone else. Also lower. And then combined with Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, all crashing. Mike Pence losing. This is with Pompeo's out. Remember, Pompeo's out. Between our last public poll and this public poll, Mike Pompeo said, I'm not doing it. I've ruled it out. So we've removed him because he was very seriously considering it. I thought the Mike Pompeo vote was going to go to the anti-Trump candidate. It did not. Mike Pence's vote that slipped, it did not. Some of Nikki Haley's went to undecided, while other undecideds flatly went to Donald Trump. Tim Scott's went to Donald Trump. Larry Elder, this is the first time we've polled him. He got nothing. All right, so let's move to marital. Married voters, 57 to 18 for Trump. Widowed, 62 to 10. Why does that matter? A lot of them are seniors. And the seniors vote. The divorced, 68 to 13. This is something Robert keeps talking about. That these aggrieved, people having trouble, typically are more Democratic. Those votes being this lopsided for Trump is a big deal. And it's a bigger deal when you think about how it will impact the general election. Trump is not supposed to be doing that good among divorced, separated, and single people. Married, sure. Widowed, sure. Even though the widow number is bad for DeSantis because he needs the older voters to come back to him. Like they were after the midterm. He needs that to have a fighting chance. They're not there. They bounced. Single, 64-16. Why? Because, prime working. I'm not quite married yet. I'm working and probably dating somebody, and I'm building myself up to getting myself in a position to become married, buy a house, have a family, the whole 9 yards. Those votes are Trump votes right now. That is MAGA. That is the heart of MAGA. Parental. If you're married and you have children over 18, 59-18 for Trump. If you're married and you have school children under the age of 18, 60-14 Trump. Yes, not yet school age though, under 18 and not yet school age, 59-13 Trump. No children, 62-18 Trump. We did military and veteran already. We did religion already, correct? We did all this already, I believe. Let's just go to a religion again real quick so you could see. Protestants, obviously, major part of the Republican primary electorate. Trump is over 60. 63-16, Catholic, which Ron DeSantis is. 56-18, Trump. Jewish even, 37-19, Trump. That's an area I thought DeSantis would be able to make inroads in. Muslims, 36-0 for Ron DeSantis. Very small, though. Nikki Haley actually gets 34% of them, which is funny to me. I think those are probably just throwaway votes. Another religion, 67% for Trump. Nothing to speak of for anyone else. 10% for Ron DeSantis, 9% for Nikki Haley, nothing for anybody else, really. Does Vivek have any of that? Yeah, he's got about 2%. No religion, 57-21. So seculars are Ron DeSantis' best group. The religious elements of the Republican primary electorate are all very, very, very much pro-Trump. So is no religion. But the best group for DeSantis is no religion. Republicans who don't have a religion. Interesting, isn't it? Evangelicals who are voting in the Republican primary, 59 for Trump, 16 for Ron DeSantis. No, they're not evangelicals, but they are Protestants and or other Christians, 65%-15. If you told you that they were Protestant, other Christians, but had no opinion on whether or not, which is the biggest group, no opinion on whether or not they're evangelicals, we could just go ahead and say most of them are probably not. Some probably are and don't want to admit it. 65-16. This is all very, very, very devastating for a Republican electorate. Let me also just bring in, I wanted to do white evangelicals, and I'll just give it to you flat out. Well, we'll wait on that. Leave that for nesting. Area, God, it's so much to go through. It's already 121. I'm going to get through this, and then I'm going to go through the story about Biden, but geez. Urban, Trump, 58-17. Suburban, Trump, 58-19. Rural, Trump, 65-13. This was Ron DeSantis' best group before. It was close. It was what, 10 points last poll? This is called mind-changing. This is really bad. For, and again, the anti-Trump forces. Now, there will be a ton of rural votes. You cannot get clobbered and lose 2/3 of the rural vote. I don't think anybody's surprised by this. If these numbers are getting to be this big, you should not be surprised at that rural number. What you should be surprised with is how badly Ron DeSantis fell. He lost half his vote. He lost half his support in suburbia. Almost half from our last poll. In the poll, and I'm just looking, where we had DeSantis at an all-time high, I want to say he was carrying the burbs by like 4, something like that. 2. All right, so he was carrying the burbs by 2, but he was doing better in rural America, much better than this. And in urban America, this is a funny thing. At least it is with Trump. Or the Republican primary this time. Urban areas are supposed to be the more liberal and moderate areas. So those are the areas you think DeSantis would do a better job. He's not. DeSantis's core vote so far, and there isn't really a DeSantis only vote. There's not. If DeSantis didn't run, then 3% would be heartbroken. I'm serious, and I'll show it to you. The rest would not. They would pick some other horse. But his core vote is an educated white voter, Republican moderate in the suburbs. Or, it's not even liberal. Can't even say liberal because he doesn't do that well with liberal Republicans. Nikki Haley does better with liberal Republicans than Ron DeSantis does. Ron DeSantis does better with moderates than Nikki Haley does. Okay? But Trump is winning them both anyway. He's just not above. He's not at a majority with liberals and moderates. He's at a supermajority, over a supermajority with conservatives. By region. All right, so you can see here, obviously, Ron DeSantis' home state is in Florida. And right now, in the crowded field, I'm just going to give this to you. In the crowded field, DeSantis is down by 10 in Florida. I want to say it was, and I'll look it up for you right now. Hold on. Because our sample in Florida is big enough to release. We oversampled some of these early states like we told you we would. And I will give you the Florida numbers right now. I don't want to just try to recall them from memory, so give me a second. Actually want to pull them up. All modes. I got to make sure it's all. It's pretty cool on the software. You can combine if you have different versions, as long as they're identical surveys. It doesn't matter what mode they're used. You can combine the results of all of their input. It's pretty cool. All right, so if you're going to vote in the Republican primary, okay, I got to do that. Oh, and let's isolate Florida. Isolating Florida here. Give me 1 second, guys. I think it's important to say this. Because, DeSantis has to do better in Georgia and in Florida. And Georgia's next, by the way. We're gonna have to do Georgia next. The problem is MAGA already took over the grassroots in Virginia, and now they're taking over Georgia. The next one will be it's more than 10 points now. Pardon my French. 48-36 Trump in Florida. Trump has a 12-point lead in the crowded field. He hasn't. Actually, let me check. In the head-to-head, it's now 19. So now Trump has had 59-40. That means DeSantis only gets 4 points, Laura. When you take away all the other candidates, DeSantis' margin or a vote share only increases from 36 to 40 in Florida. Trump's increases roughly 10 points. Don't say that live. Don't say that live. I just thought it'd be interesting to tell you that. After watching that clip of DeSantis rehearsing, I learned Andrew Gillum is more fun in hotel rooms. I haven't seen this clip, but this really is a problem for DeSantis. I can't believe look, money talks. I'm just going to say that without insulting anybody. Money talks. It does. It's really hard to convince somebody of a data-based argument when they're dangling $1 million in front of their face. I'm sorry, but that's just true. This is all really, really bad. In California, which was supposed to be the place where they're going to stop Trump, DeSantis is cratered as well. And we're not quite big enough yet. So consider this would have a pretty big sampling error. Okay. But DeSantis is now at 23% in California, which is a major, major drop. And Trump went over 50. So again, that's a massive lead. Massive lead. Again, it's a small sample, so let's give it some time. But Texas, let's look at Texas. That's one where we're also oversampling. It's not even close. That's not even close anymore. Trump has an almost 40-point lead in Texas. What the hell are they doing? Yes, Excalibur, I did say that DeSantis is in fact down to Trump. In the head-to-head, it was 10 in Florida specifically. Yes. In the head-to-head, let me get rid of it. And let me just make sure again I'm right. It changed. It's now actually 12, 48 to 36. Trump is ahead in Florida. And that's the crowded field. The combined field, when you just do Trump at the head-to-head, Trump, DeSantis undecided. DeSantis raises his vote share increases from 36 to 40, and Trump's increases from 48 to 59. So it's just under 59. So it's like 58.6. So almost 10 points. So more than double what DeSantis increases. Again, this idea that like, oh, I just need to get him head to head. It's not true right now. If you got head to head, it frankly would just be a bigger embarrassment. Because at least if you lose in a crowded field, you could say, well, I was second and I got a chunk. You lose in a head to head and you get your butt kicked 2 to 1, 66-33. I think that's a bigger embarrassment than losing 56 to 20 in, a crowded field. And in the case of Florida, it is 48 to 36. Undecided is only 4.5%. Mike Pence is only getting 2%. Vivek's getting 2%. And then Tim Scott's getting 2%. Nikki Haley's getting 2%. And just about, rounding here. And then someone else is getting 5%. So there's just not a lot of room. And Rich Wood said Georgia's, fixed against Trump. That's why you have people going in there next. The grassroots precinct people, they're going in there next because they do largely view Georgia as a very riggable state.
Did you mute yourself, my love?
Oh, crap, I did. What was the last thing you heard? I was talking about the region stuff and the South.
Yeah, you got to start it.
I said, and in the Northeast, you could see his margin there, 60 to 18. A lot of that is coming from traditionally blue areas. Pennsylvania, we do not have a big enough sample for me to really feel good about, saying it. And neither do we do New Hampshire, but we are targeting New Hampshire. It's so small. But Trump is way ahead in what we do have for Pennsylvania right now. So I don't know where these other polls are coming from. Again, Pennsylvania is a great state in that if you poll it with only live caller, you're going to screw it up. In a presidential election specifically, because you can screw it up. We had Oz up by a little bit. You can screw it up with an online panel as well. New Hampshire, Trump is above 50. In Pennsylvania, Trump's above 50. So even with all this combined, New Hampshire, I just don't. If you combined everyone in New Hampshire, you still can't beat Trump. You can't. So we didn't ask about Sununu because he's out. He's on the DeSantis train. That's what I heard. So we'll see. But that's what I heard. All right, by region. And then by mode, I want to show you something. Online here, a lot more undecided, okay? And a lot more someone else's combined, if you combine it. Online, you can see we reached people, obviously, that, DeSantis is doing a little bit better in online. But if you nest this by age, what you'll see, it is so crystal clear. On the phone, we also do peer-to-peer. That's why we had such strong results for Trump in the phone. But if you just do traditional phone interviews What you will see is that the older Republicans who pick up the phone are DeSantis's strongest support by mode. Older moderates who pick up the phone and talk to you, educated, older, moderate Republicans. So if you only do that, you may get DeSantis at like 25 to 30%. You could, especially if you're not waiting right. You could. However, it's very clear when you reach younger people and, look, the Republican, I saw a poll the other day where they literally had 0 for non-white voters. That's insane. Now, you can have too small of a sample to want to show statistical significance, fine. But when you have the panels on CNN and ABC and NBC melting down because their polls are showing a huge non-white Republican vote and that Trump is killing it with these people, you best believe what I'm seeing is real. And Evan, you mean in a general election, right? Does Trump have a chance in Pennsylvania? In a general election, I imagine you're talking about, right? I mean, obviously, Wisconsin is, for any Republican, the better target. Not for anyone, actually. Romney lost Wisconsin by a greater margin than he lost Pennsylvania. So that's not necessarily true. But I will say this, Trump kind of Republican. Wisconsin is always closer. Pennsylvania was his best state in the polling in both 16 and 20, yet Wisconsin was closer. I think a lot of that has to do with the evangelical vote. If I showed it to you, you'd see Trump is in the 70s with evangelicals. DeSantis is in below 50. He's at 50, just about 50. That's not. Do I have the graph here? I think I do. Did I delete him? Why would I do that? No, there it is. So yeah, or 60. Sorry, he's at 60 against Biden. That's right. I'm so glad I pulled this up. 59.9%, 70.4. That's a big deal when you're looking at states like Wisconsin, Ohio, and Iowa, because that's how Trump widens out Iowa so much, that among other things. That's how he widens out Ohio so much, that among other things. But in Wisconsin, that's how he was able to carry Wisconsin. And let's be real, 2020. I'm not going to make Democrat arguments. All right. Don't reduce yourself. If you don't support Trump, don't reduce yourself to regurgitating Democratic talking points about the 2020 election. If you really do that, then one of two things. One, you're just willing to say whatever it is you got to say to help your guy in your own position. And two, you're part of the problem. You're not part of the solution. I mean, if you think that those talking points are legit, I really don't know how that makes you America first. You don't align with the voters at all. So I don't, I'm just saying. So in any event, that's, again, that white working class margin up there. When you ask if he has a chance in Pennsylvania, with that kind of number, he does. Even with all the nonsense and the shenanigans, he does. And even though we had, listen, our last technical public poll, the one that we had that had Oz just barely ahead, was a poll that we kind of followed up for locals. But the last one we did for a media outlet, which was just a week or two before, that was for CD Media, and we still had Oz down at that point, although it was getting closer. Mastriano down too as well, both. Although we did have Mastriano closer than he got in our final. I think there were a lot of undecideds, and Mastriano lost basically all of them because you got to compete in major media markets. If your name is not Donald Trump, you need to compete like a traditional candidate competes. You can't get away with what he does. But generally speaking, the bottom line here is that even though we had Oz down in the CD Media poll, we had Trump up by 7. And then even though we had Oz just barely ahead in that last poll, we had Trump up by 5 or 4. So Trump was always, and then Oz lost by 2. So even if you correct for our error, Oz being up by 2, right? Him losing by 2, it's still a Trump win by anywhere between a point to 3 points, right? Something like that. And that makes sense. That makes sense to me with these kind of numbers, 60 to 20 something, 61 to 20. What was it again? 60 to 24. That makes sense. And in fact, those are bigger numbers than we ever saw with Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was at 32 and Trump was at like 58. So, and then in 2020, even when Trump was winning the working class, he was not winning them like that. It wasn't good enough. I think that was one of my main quotes for the Epoch Times, the final national poll we did for the Epoch Times, which is that the Electoral College is close. The national poll, which was Biden plus 4, is a Biden plus 4, yes, but Trump could still win the Electoral College. However, he needs to do better with the white working class than we are currently showing him doing, which is why we had him down by 2 in Michigan. We had him slightly down in Wisconsin, even though I think I modeled that electorate to Democratic. And if you reweighted my poll for the actual electorate, which was more Republican. I think, what did we have? D plus 1 or 2 in Wisconsin? It turned out to be like R plus 4. If you would have reweighted that, you would have got like a Trump plus 1.5, maybe something like that. And in Minnesota, Biden plus 13, he wound up winning by 10. Again, that was because of the working class number. He just wasn't doing as well as he had done in 16 with that group. And in Pennsylvania is a perfect example. Them and seniors. All right. He did better with younger voters, but he didn't do well enough to offset how much he had lost with seniors and working class voters. Right? Or supposedly, but that's the reason why. That is the reason we didn't have him up. Contrary to the BS part of the smear campaign, to attack polling records, because they would cut off their left testicle to have my polling record. Are you kidding me? Anybody in this business would cut off their left nut to have the record I have. All right, so let's see. I do want to get to this story real quick. Would I be able to look at Ancestry? I'll put it up. You talking about white detail, Asian detail, Hispanic detail? Just haven't gotten it up yet, but I will get it up. All right, it will be up there. Check back a little later. In fact, did I change it yet? Let's see. I'll put it on there right now for you, NL. Oh, you're a YouTube member. Let me get this done for you right now. Which one are we going to put it on? There's the columns. I got it. The only thing is, once you lay out this stuff the way I do, it is a pain to stick them in between. It always wants to nest. It just nested white detail with party. See, that's what it does. I wish I could do this another way. This way people don't have to wait so long for party. Oop, got white in there. Which one are you looking for specifically? White, Hispanic? Because in a Republican primary, Asian detail is not going to be that much. It's just not. I'll put it in there because it'll be for the general election, basically, but it's not going to be that much. All right, let me save it. Don't give me a hard time. Let's refresh it. Let's go to the Republican nomination, and I got to change that. Which party primary you're going to vote in. I got to fix that. Let's look at white detail. So Danish, only 3. Let's look at some of the bigger numbers here. The English, which English descendant in white detail, or American/English. The English side of the American, the English side of the English-American ancestry is actually rather moderate, or more moderate than some others, okay? For instance, Germans and Dutch can be pretty conservative sometimes. Irish, Italians. If you call yourself an English, you're more moderate. If you call yourself, I'm American, that's more conservative. Or definitely more, by the way, and this shouldn't surprise you, definitely more America first, all right? And since this is a detail, let me move in and get rid of this. We don't need us, Laura. Let me show them.
He said white mainly.
White mainly? Okay, so here's white. Dutch, look at that number. And it's a small sample, but my God, if you talk to 26 people and 20 of them tell you they're for Donald Trump, even though it's a small number, I mean, you can't help but to say 79%. Wow. English, 59.6 to 16.5 for Trump. That is where DeSantis has to make inroads. I'm just going to tell you right now. And that's where he could have and can make inroads. I don't know about Ken now. I honestly don't know. I think that, everyone's expecting this bump. When he announces, you don't always get a bump. And he's awkward. So the campaign is going to have to very much handle this announcement. He can't take questions from the media. He can't go off the rails because when he does, it don't go right. All right. So they're going to have to handle it. And then Fox News is going to have to just push the cuts they want to push. But even still, I don't know if he's going to get it because he already got the scrutiny period, or at least a minor scrutiny period, which always follows an announcement. You could have a very short honeymoon period where you get a bump. You don't always. But you always get a scrutiny period. And the last time Ron DeSantis ran through a scrutiny period, he failed miserably. Miserably. So I don't know where these high hopes are coming from. 102 interviews with Italian primary voters. 70% went for Trump. Irish, 62 to 20 for Trump. Another sizable group, 135. Germans, 54 to 22 for Trump over DeSantis. The French, 54 to 15. Actually, Pence took the 15. Anybody else significant here? Not really. No. I mean, we might as well just stick to Haley and above. Even though Haley's not even really significant. She did do all right with some of the English voters, and I'm not even surprised at that. I'm not. Polish, 48 of them, not much, but 63 went to Trump. Scott Irish, 58 interviews, 69% went to Trump. Scottish, 40 interviews, not a lot. 57 went to Trump, 21 went to DeSantis. Swedish, not a lot at all. 61% went to Trump, 15 went to DeSantis. But what does this mean? When you're looking at German, English, Irish, and Italian combined, all right, and Dutch, by the way, Pennsylvania, all right? When you're looking at Irish, Scottish, Swedish, Norwegian, that's the Rust Belt area, most definitely places like even parts of Pennsylvania, but really Minnesota, Michigan, Minnesota and Wisconsin most for sure. But Iowa also too has some of this. But this is really bad news right there. And so is this for DeSantis in a state like Wisconsin, where last time they made a pretty good stand against Trump. However, Wisconsin has changed since Ted Cruz beat Trump in 2015. It's changed a lot. How do we know? Rebecca Clayfish, folks. Tim Michaels versus Rebecca Clayfish. End of story.
Does the French include French Canadians?
If they're in Maine. So think about the French Canadians that migrated to Maine. Yes, it does. That's a great question. Who the hell asked that question?
NO.
That was friggin' fantastic. I'm impressed. Hold on, I'm choking on water.
Smooth operator.
No, I'm very impressed by that. Very, very, very good question. But you're looking at a moderate county like Bucks. Who's going to win Bucks? Well, in a Republican primary, Oz won Bucks. He beat McCormick in Bucks County. With these Italian and Irish numbers, Trump's going to thrash him. Who's going to take Dutch country? I mean, is it so much we can infer everything here? Yeah, a little. It has in the past, hasn't it? German's a big number. That's where DeSantis could perform. Germans outside of English American is the biggest descending voting group in Pennsylvania. So that's opportunity for DeSantis to get a foothold in a state like Pennsylvania. Between that and Montgomery, Delaware, right? Delco, places like that. Even if I actually think Trump's going to take Philly. I do. No, I don't think so. He's going to take Philly. Montgomery, Delaware, Berks, some of those other ones, somebody like DeSantis would have a good a good chance winning some of those counties. But he's going to get creamed in the Northeast. He's going to get creamed in the Northwest. He's going to lose Bucks in Philadelphia. He's going to lose Allegheny. He is absolutely going to lose Allegheny County. Trump's going to carry Allegheny. So the rest of the Southwest, I mean, I don't know. I don't know here, folks. I don't know what they want. I don't know what they're looking for. I mean, bull only goes so far. Getting down to brass tacks now. There's just no opportunity here. Yeah, it's early. Yeah. But we know things about these men. And running on Pennsylvania with a Social Security anywhere in the Midwest, outside of Wisconsin, which was the one like last stronghold, the traditional conservative could try to beat the typical moderate Republican in the Rust Belt. Romney carried all the Rust Belt states except, why? Because they don't like cutting Social Security. Romney tried to run against that stuff. You couple that with America First, it's like, good luck. I talk to Jack Poso about this all the time. Talk to his family about cutting Social Security. Lifelong Republicans. No way. Those ads hurt. I'd say they're going to hurt because Trump's obviously not even started unleashing them yet. But he's been running ads. Or Save America PAC has. And what are they attacking? Ron DeSantis' record on war and entitlements. It's brilliant. And you can call it whatever you want. But it's brilliant. Because that's why he won these states and no other Republican can or has at the presidential level. And now we're at a point where Republican primary voters themselves don't like it. All right. Also, Hispanic details, some funny stuff in here, but of course it's a smaller, look at Cuban, Trump over DeSantis. I mean, holy moly. Look at that. Trump's he's winning the Mexican Republican primary vote. He's crushing the Cuban vote, which was weighted down because we have a lot more Cuban interviews. It's weighted down because you can't overrepresent Florida. We oversampled them when we oversampled Florida, So same thing, by the way, with Puerto Ricans in the I-4 corridor. But when we weight down, they're weighted down to 11 interviews. Mexicans are weighted down to 33 interviews, weighted down to 15. And they do their best don't do their best. That's the math. Does what it does to bring it down. By the way, the funny thing is the Venezuelans we spoke to weren't even in Florida. Or no, I'm sorry. A few of them were, but most of them weren't. Anyway, Trump carrying the Puerto Ricans 60-12, Peruvians 57-43. Very, very, very small. Mexicans, one of the bigger groups, 51 to Pence getting 23%, and DeSantis only getting 4%. And then the Cubans, Trump just dominated. DeSantis did get some Cuban support. He did. But Trump is just dominating 78-22. So, what do you say to that? Asian detail. DeSantis did well with Vietnamese voters. All right. Whereas some of the bigger groups, Chinese, ironically, Trump did. Every single Filipino went to Trump. And it's a very, very, very small group. All right. So, just remember that. That's so small. I mean, it's difficult. That will be more interesting, though, when we look at the general election, because there'll be a lot more voters. All right. So while we're at it, let's look at the Republican candidate specific support. Damn, I'm not getting to that other thing. I am doing them today? Right at 2? You better clarify that with me quickly.
Because 206. 206 to 216.
Wait a minute. Say that again. You said 206 to 216?
Correct.
All right. Why don't you give them this link if they want it?
Okay.
Everybody check out Charlie Kirk after the show today. I mean, immediately after the show today. And then you're going to have enough time to get to your appointment. I hope so. Okay. Let's go to the Republican presidential nomination and let's look at the Republican candidate specific vote. I did want to bring up the other thing. We talked about it briefly. That's all there is to it. We went through a little bit of the states. Maybe on Friday, we'll do Freelo on Friday. We'll talk more about the media using George Santos and this stupid civil trial with Trump to cover up the report by House Republicans detailing with bank records and in great, great detail. They got witnesses and bank records. If this was Donald Trump, he'd be out of the Oval Office already. What they got by non is unbelievable. We'll have to talk about it later, but the media is just so corrupt that the country can't work like this with this kind of corruption. They just can't. As you can see, I would vote for the party's nominee. Actually, let me do it this way so you can see better. Just remember that, guys, that sometimes, where are you? What am I doing here? Why isn't it there anymore? Something happened. It didn't get put back. Oh, man. I'll do it real quick. So right before candidate-specific support should be the Republican nomination question. All right, let me save it. Did you give Charlie those numbers?
Of course I did, darling.
All right. Don't forget, folks, check out Charlie after the show. Republican candidate-specific support. Republican presidential nomination. I did it backwards again. What? My brain is just farting here. I'm sorry, guys. Republican presidential nomination. Okay. So thinking about the general election, if your choice, first choice, does not receive the Republican nomination, would you vote for the party's nominee, consider voting for the Democratic nominee, or not vote at all? We are going to add from now on. I heard you loud and clear. You guys are right. Would you vote for the party's nominee? We're going to say another party's nominee. So we include third party in there. Consider voting for the Democratic nominee or not vote at all. Or vote for the party's nominee. Consider voting for the Democratic or third party nominee or not vote at all. Okay? You will see Trump's bust vote now. Trump or bust vote is almost 1 in 5. It has now went from 12 something, 12.1 it was last time, to 19%, just under 20. Damn, Bannon was right. DeSantis's vote, like I said, 3% would be heartbroken if Ron DeSantis did not run. The vast majority of them, as with the other leaders to the nomination, not leaders, other, I don't even know what to call them, people with particular support, they would vote for the nominee. It doesn't matter, right? The nominee can count on about 8 in 10 support, just under, for each of the other 3 top vote share getters. Only less than 2/3 of Trump vote can be counted on. 19% would not vote at all. And 16% would consider voting for another party's nominee. And I have heard in the interviews that people are taking this to mean third party. They are. Some maybe like either the Democrat or a Libertarian candidate. They are. But I just want to specifically state it next time. And that's what we're going to do. All right. Bottom line here. I'm bottom lining it for you. People have been saying a lot since we started this about, oh, I think it's a cult vote. See, it's a cult. Well, I wouldn't run around town saying more than 1 in 5 of my voters would vote for Joe Biden. I wouldn't be sharing that all over town if I was you. So again, those who live in glass houses should not throw stones. Okay. And no, Poles are Poles, Russians are Russians, but the rest of the Slavs are in other. Okay. That's a great question too, though. Maybe we'll say like other Eastern European, something like that. Other Slavic. It's just that we stuck to the census. We outlined what the census outlines on the top line. Why? Because we didn't want to go in any more granular detail, because the fact is it would be so small of a sample. We don't want people inferring things that they shouldn't really infer. All right. Of Mike Pence's, again, mostly around the part. So between Mike Pence and Donald Trump, and by the way, 15% is roughly the norm in the polling when it comes to stuff like this. And that's why if you're at 85, the first thing a nominee needs to do is consolidate 90% of their base. All right. You don't want to lose any more than 10%, but it happens, getting 95, 90, That's great. 92. If you're at or above 90, you're in good shape in polling. You have to do that. Then, of course, you have to start moving toward independence and winning over people that are actually persuadable, not just independents, persuadable nonpartisans. All right. And of course, you have to get your base out. Hopefully, preferably in better numbers than your opponent. That's the idea. So, that being said, when it comes to Trump and Pence, I would consider voting for the other party's nominee is actually ballpark where it normally is at this point, especially. This will shrink to about 10% as we get closer. I almost guarantee it will. However, this is not normal, especially when you're talking about 240 interviews. Vivek's there too, but Vivek's not a traditional Republican, and he's only 65 interviews being represented here. This is almost 240 interviews being represented. You're looking at 50 people. Again, a little over 1 in 5 who said they'd vote for Biden. That's higher. And I know it only seems like 5 percentage points away from Trump and Pence. It's not. 5 away from Trump, 6 away from Pence. That's not the right way to think about this. First of all, Pence is a lot smaller share, so it had more likelihood to have this statistical noise, where it's like Nikki Haley, because there's not that many for Nikki Haley, so it looks like half is willing to vote for Biden. That may be true, but it also may be that's just such a small sample. We didn't get a lot of people that would say that, right? Tim Scott, same thing. Is that real? No. If we probably talked to 500 people that support Nikki Haley, it would shrink quite a bit. 250 people, like DeSantis, it would shrink a bit, quite a bit. All right, so there it is. So again, the Elizabeth Glass House should not throw stones. Trump's voters are with him and only with him because they feel like Donald Trump is the only guy who ever really, had their back. And I hear it and I understand it. To attack them is like a cult. Like at least they're not actively saying they'll vote for Joe Biden. Which one's worse? My buddy Kurt Schlichter would say they're both bad. Because if you don't vote, it is a vote for Joe Biden. No, I hear what you're saying, but that's not really true. If Democrats stay home, it's better for Joe Biden than them actually voting for Donald Trump. You'd want them to stay home instead of vote for the other guy. DeSantis' voters here are saying, or more than 1 in 5 of them are saying, oh, I'm going to vote. And I would probably vote for Joe Biden. If you're the Republican nominee and you're not Ron DeSantis, you want them to stay home. Again, glass houses. Do not miss Friday. We have a lot more to go over. I will get to a lot more of your questions. And we'll, of course, have a lot more in polling that we're going to nest and get into. White evangelicals, too. We didn't do that, but that's okay because for the general election matchups, it's probably more relevant anyway. Well, of course, it's relevant to a Republican primary, but it's a big deal. So we'll look at that on Friday along with other things. Don't forget, I'm about to hop off right now, and I'm going to go on to Charlie Kirk in about 5 minutes. So if you want to check out that interview, you definitely can catch me there on Charlie Kirk. Am I missing anything, Laura? I don't think so.
No.
Don't forget to support the Public Polling Project far and wide. Contribute to it if you can. BigDataPoll.com. Scroll to the bottom. Share it far and wide. Contribute if you can because we want to continue to do this. And we're going to cover the difference. But here's a little secret. The amount that we always put up for each Public Polling Project campaign, we're still covering the difference. So all help is appreciated. And we will let you know how that goes. Friday, don't miss it. Inside the Numbers, Free Will and Friday, a lot more questions. Woo woo. See you then. Laura, you got anything to say before we go?
Deuces.
Thanks, folks. All the best. Love you. See you Friday.
How much you wanna bet